Thank you all for joining us today for what we hope to be the first of many such discussions as part of Bay Ridge Prep's Living History series. I'll limit my remarks for the sake of devoting as much time as possible to our guest, Mr. Mottola, the reason for you being here today. As you will hear during his presentation, Mr. Mottola's native intelligence, Brooklyn street smarts, and deft flexibility to adapt to changing situations enabled him to clutch victory from the jaws of defeat on numerous occasions. His practical approach to the problems he encountered on the battlefields of Italy and later in the various German stalags allowed him and those around him to persevere. Many managed to live through the horrors of this war because of Mr. Mottola's guidance and example.
I think it's appropriate that I give some explanation of how this occurred. You know what? I was probably the last guy in our neighborhood to be drafted. Okay, and all of us went willingly. I must tell you that. There was very, very little dissension, and everybody felt we had to do our job. I got the letter from President Roosevelt, dated, I think it was May 6th or 7th of 43, with an induction of May 13th, 1943. Anyhow, now I'm in Naples, okay, and again, I repeat, I'm assigned to the 36th Division. Now it comes to the point we go up to the front lines. And I'll never forget it. We're loaded on trucks. And of course, when you go up to the front lines, the engineers have to clear minefields. And they put white tape so that you can see where they're walking, because you don't want to go stepping on those mines. And we started to cross the river on January 20th. My unit, H Company, the heavy weapons company, we crossed on the night of the 21st. Okay, this is the Rapido. But when I was crossing that plank, the plank was perhaps this wide, and it was icy, and there was luminous strips on the edges of the plank. Now, this is 11 o'clock at night, by the way, on the night of the 21st. And I'm crossing the plank, and I'm saying, God, if I go over, I'm dead. There's no way I could survive. I could never survive that stream. First of all, I wasn't a swimmer, and with all that equipment, it's impossible to survive. But luckily for me, I got across on this plank. At 4:15 approximately in the afternoon of the 22nd, the Germans had blown out the pontoon bridges and the rubber boats, or those boats. We got the river at our back, and the Germans on three sides. And all of a sudden, we get smoke. The Germans put smoke around us. After they laid the smoke, I see this German, and he's hollering, Americana, Honda Ho. Honda Ho, which means hands up. So I peek out of my, by the way, to this day, I wonder if I was a coward or I did the right thing, but I'm saying to myself, I could shoot this guy, or let me rephrase it. I could shoot at him. I don't know if I'm going to hit him. Should I do it? And I'm saying to myself, all of Americans are getting out of the hole, and we're just helpless for 48 hours, basically. And I said, if I shoot at that guy, first of all, I don't know if I'm going to hit him. Second, if I hit him, I think a lot of our American boys are going to get killed. And I said, no, you know what? I'm not going to shoot at him. When I was captured, there were perhaps about 550 of us captured. The next day, they captured another 250 of our division. We had 1,600 casualties in those 2 days. 1,600. The Germans collect us, and now we got to walk through the minefield, the German minefield, and there's all kinds of signs. Achtung, Minen, attention, mines. But anyhow, they're collecting us, and now we get to their side of the line. Now we're getting American artillery firing at the Germans. But it's dark by this time. And they line us up, and they start searching us, and they took my school ring, my wristwatch, and I had $48 in my pocket, which I had just gotten a partial payment. Okay? Don't forget it. And in my pocket, I had 2/3 of an emergency chocolate bar, okay? And I said, these SOBs are not going to get my chocolate bar. And I was eating the chocolate bar as they were searching us. they collect us, and they march us out of that area. I have no idea where, but I wound up in the prison camp in Italy, and they stick us in a filthy, filthy, filthy cellar. I was there 5 days, and I'm not ashamed to tell you, I was so hungry, I went into the garbage cans that the Germans, when they threw their scraps away, looking for some food. Eventually, they stuck us in a boxcar, like a sardine. I don't know how many men were in that boxcar, but we couldn't all stand up at one time, and all we had was a little can in the corner to do our business. 5 days in that boxcar. Sick guys. You want to see sick guys. Finally, we went up through the Brenner Pass. I wound up in a British POW camp, and I'll never forget it. One of the English ex-POW, a POW at the time, he gave me a sip of milk, condensed milk that he had gotten from a Red Cross or something. We have Red Cross, they called it something else in Britain. And he gave me a sip of that milk. I couldn't believe my body surged just from that sip of milk. Well, anyhow, I spent a couple of days in that English POW camp, and after that, they transported us again. They stuck us in, I don't remember, trucks or whatever. We wound up in another camp. Having read history, I can only conclude it was like one of the death camps that you may have read about or heard about. And it had such a horrible feeling and look. But anyhow, this is where they put us. They told us to strip, and they're going to give us a shower. Holy cow, what happened to a lot of people that went in for showers. So at this point, I'm frightened. But, if you think you're helpless when you have clothing on, think about when you don't have clothing, how much more helpless you feel. So they take us in this room, and I'm looking up at the top of the ceiling. I see these apertures, and I wasn't too happy about being there. But anyhow, we had our shower, thank God, and as you can see, I survived the shower. So what, in effect, they did was deloused us. And bingo, we put our clothing on. And by the way, I must tell you in all truth that I was a lucky prisoner of war because they didn't take my gear away. All they took away was my steel helmet, thank God, because it was so cold. Some of our guys endured the fact that they took away their coats and their combat suit and their boats. Poor guys. You think I suffered? Forget about it. They suffered a hell of a lot more. Bingo, I'm on a train again, and I wind up in camp, I think it was 4B. That's another American camp. And I wasn't there too long, actually. I can't count the days. And I wind up on what they call an Arbeitskommando, which is a work party. Okay? I and 47 other Americans were transported to East Prussia, a little town called Kopenow, and they called it Kreis-Lauenburg, bitter cold, okay? Okay, now I'm on the farm. So they lock us up in an old, what was at one time a pigsty, and they have double-decker beds, 48 guys, and the room wasn't as big as this, 48 of us. So every morning, they take the chains off the door, the locks and the chains, and the guards would call us Rausmit, and we'd go up in the courtyard, and a major owned the farm, and boy, was he slick looking. I mean, those German uniforms are really beautiful, okay? So he'd come on the courtyard, and I guess what you would call the foreman, he was assigned different guys in our group, the 48 of us, different tasks. Sometimes you're out and you spread manure, sometimes you spread lime, sometimes you planted potatoes or you picked potatoes. Some guys wound up in the grain of rye where they made the liquor. Some guys were lucky enough to go in the barn to milk the cows. So it was different tasks. POW life is pretty miserable. It's miserable. We were getting German bread, black bread, which was 40% sawdust. This is documented. 40% of the bread was documented. It was sawdust, and that's what we were eating. Luckily, we're in an area where, when the railroads weren't bombed, we were lucky enough to get a 10-pound parcel of food from the Red Cross, without which I don't think we would have survived. Because what we got from the Germans, the only thing I ever got from the Germans was potato peel soup. That's it, nothing else, okay? So luckily we had these Red Cross parcels, 10 pounds. So you say, wow, 10 pounds, but that had to last a week. And you wouldn't believe how, there was a quarter pound of Velveeta cheese and some bully beef and liver patty and clam milk and 5 packs of butts and a couple of chocolate bars. I mean, this was good trading material, I might add, okay? But we had to survive on that 10 pounds of food. In the cold winter months, I might tell you, this was not an easy thing either. How did we wash? We had 2 barrels outside, okay? And in the wintertime, when you had to wash, you had to break the ice to wash yourself. And we shaved every morning to keep our morale in that ice cold water. Wasn't too pleasant, okay? But we did what we had to do. We as Americans were proud to be Americans, and we tried to keep our morale up. When we were assigned our task, we would go out in the field, whether it be 10 or 12 in one group, and we always went out in the field singing at the top of our lungs all the patriotic songs. All the patriotic, at the top of our lung, going to work in the fields and coming back. Some guys had the attitude, we're going to try to escape. I thought it was helpless and futile. I might say that I learned enough English and German to get by, but I never thought I was competent enough to get by and escape or even try. Maybe I was another coward, I don't know. But if I was a coward, a lot of the other guys were cowards too. Stalag Tubi now, up in East Prussia. They stick us in a cell where the 3 of us could hardly stand up, with a little can in the corn to do our business. And in this case, instead of having a straw mattress, all we had were the wooden slats. They wouldn't even give us a straw to sleep on, okay? And for 28 days, we endured the agony of an Austrian baron in the German army interrogating us, never charging us, God is my witness, and threatening to shoot us and to be put in an international prison camp. Why? I have no idea. To this day, I don't have any idea. They take the 3 of us and they put us in a Russian POW camp. Now, if you think an American POW camp is bad, you don't want to be in a Russian camp where they die like flies. The Germans would beat them with poles. They would die, strip them of their clothes, put them in a wagon and dump them in the common grave. And we're in this environment being threatened all the time. I'm now in what they call a Straf company, punishment group. Okay? In this punishment group, there's like 23 French Foreign Legionnaires, 22, 21 Frenchmen, a couple of Serbs, a couple of Italians, and a couple of Poles, all of whom are in some kind of trouble with the Germans. Okay? So we're in this Russian camp, and, we're scared, we're frightened at this point, being threatened and all that. I never forget, it's January 28th of 45. The Russians make a big drive from the east, because we're on the eastern front, okay? Bitter cold, absolutely bitter cold. They tell us to get our stuff, this Straf company, okay? And they line us up, and what do we see as where we're lined up? They have American Red Cross parcels as high as the eye can see, and the circumference of which was like a block square. Now, it's May 3rd, and it's 4:15 in the morning. And I'm sleeping near the barn door. There's like, 120-something guys, French fire legionnaires and French and all that. And I'm right near the door, and I hear the door squeak. The door was maybe as high as the ceiling, the barn door. And I hear the squeak. And I get up, and I see the helmet of a GI. I couldn't mistake it. And I leaped up, and boy, I screamed, and you never saw a happier bunch of guys in your life.